Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Untitled Marvel Project. I'm your host, Tanner Dykstra, associated here, as always, with my mischievous co-host, Tucker Hazel. We're back. Boy, is it good to be back. We're reviewing episode 1 of Disney Plus Marvel Studios Loki series. Tucker, it's 3 a.m. We
Yeah, it
just
is.
watched it. But this is not going to be a low-key Loki review because if I may show my hand early, I very much enjoyed this pilot episode. We'll be getting into all the minutia of this episode, but before we do that, we'll be breaking down every single episode of this series, other series, Marvel movies, movies outside of the Marvel universe, anything in particular. You should subscribe to this channel, like this video, and join the Discord. That link is in the description. But now now that we have all that out of the way, Tucker, what did you think of Loki?
Well, I think Loki must have scrambled your brains a little
It's
bit.
also 3 a.m.
That was a stumbly intro there, but
Wow.
I think that Loki was a lot of fun. Episode 1, I believe it's simply called Burdened with Glorious Purpose, the
Hmm.
classic Loki quote. And man, they really like to make sure you remember that that was his quote
Oh
in
yes.
the trailers. But I'm excited for this show because I think this first trailer got a lot of the stuff the first episode got a lot of
Hmm.
stuff from the trailers out of the way. So we're going to be seeing a lot of new stuff coming up. And I think this first episode, I was a little bit, I wouldn't say I was underwhelmed because I did enjoy it, but there wasn't a ton of surprises. And
Hmm.
I think that maybe it's because they made so many trailers leading up to this. But while it was solid, I wish there had been a little bit held back from this first episode so it didn't just feel like, yeah, that's basically what I expected.
Yeah. Like I said, I very much enjoyed this. I like the attitude that the whole thing had, the set design, the music. I love Tom Hiddleston. He's clearly having fun. He's also an executive producer on this series,
Yeah.
which is very I didn't know until the credits started to roll. But I also, outside of all the neat things that it does visually and conceptually, I think it does a lot of neat things for Loki's character, sort of an underserved character in the MCU who were finally getting his own series, and they're not, mishandling his character so far. They're doing some really interesting things. But Tucker, I feel that there's no better place to start than the beginning of this episode.
Yeah, that sounds okay.
We get a quick recap of Endgame. We get some Iron Man imagery when he lands in the Mongolian desert, and then we're right into the TVA stuff.
hmm
And that's one thing I really appreciate about this first episode is that it just throws you into the wackiness here.
hmm
I wholeheartedly believe it's just like we're going full out. We inundated you with trailers beforehand, so if anyone was skeptical, we put it all out there. But this one is weird. It's wacky. Owen Wilson's there. He's got a mustache, just like yours truly, and
hmm
everyone's having a great time.
Yeah, I think that one of my things that I was a little bit underwhelmed by at the beginning of the episode is I don't think Loki's like bombastic ec- his energy in those first few movies that he's in, especially in Avengers, is
Mm,
really bold, and he's a little more underserved and kind of wacky when he's
yes,
showing up in the TVA and he's quipping and stuff. I'm like, okay, that doesn't quite feel like
they
early MCU Loki.
they turned him into a Marvel protagonist,
And
but
exactly, and
he's making quips.
I think that would have worked if they had led up to that a little
Hmm.
more. If he had shown up in the TVA and just was not taking any shit, he's like, no, I really am the god of mischief. I need to be out there like claiming my throne
Hmm.
instead of no, I'm the god of mischief, and I will claim my throne. I feel like it wasn't quite the Loki I was expecting,
Hmm.
though I do think that by the end of the episode, I'm already interested in what this variant of Loki will become, because of how he reacts to his future and is introspecting, and Owen Wilson is sort of psychoanalyzing him. I think that there's an interesting character here to develop, and I'm interested to see how this will play into the greater future of the MCU with this version of Loki, because
Hmm.
with all the things set up for him, I kind of don't see him as a one-off character in this show, especially because I think the TVA will be set up to be more largely important,
Hmm.
and presumably the TVA will fall by the end of this show. Just, I mean, that's me predicting, but I think that'll be really important. I see you're not
I'm gonna put
really
that
on
aside,
the
Tucker.
side with me
I'm
there.
gonna put that wild speculation to the side because I want to talk about Loki Laufeyson in this
That
series,
sounds reasonable.
because I was very much surprised that they dedicated a lot of this episode to character development for him, basically railroading him through the important plot points of Loki in the MCU to get 2012 Loki caught up. And I think
Yeah.
what they do a really interesting thing in making him feel insignificant. I mean, you take 2012 Loki, he
Yeah.
is, I am burdened with glorious purpose. I am going to become the ruler of Midgard and the Nine Realms, which we get in this. And also, he's a fun, quippy Marvel protagonist as well, like you brought up.
Hmm.
But they do a great job of just like dragging him through the dirt of like,
Yeah.
oh man, I am like insignificant in all of this. Like,
Hmm.
the Owen Wilson does the psychoanalysis, like you said. He's like, man, I like in the grand scheme of the sacred timeline, I'm just like this guy who brings death and destruction, and then I lose to ultimately like make other people fulfill their greater purpose.
Yeah.
So I am not who I thought I was. I accidentally killed my mother, the only person who ever really cared for me in this world. And then he's obviously sees his death in Infinity War, and I think that does a great job of setting up an interesting character for him going forward, as well as basically catching him up to the Loki that we kind of knew in or Infinity War rather.
Yeah, I'm glad that they did that catching up. And I think it'll be a lot more interesting seeing that version of Loki with that information react to things in the future. I did find it pretty shoehorny for them to be like, yeah, here's the scenes from the other movies. Remember these moments? And I'm like,
These great
yeah,
Loki
okay.
moments.
I guess they need to do that to catch up people who are too lazy to watch the other MCU.
Hmm.
But I did feel like, especially the fact that they just literally had a machine that is greatest hits of MCU
Yeah,
moments. I was like, that's a little bit, it feels a little bit forced. And
yeah.
I think it's unfortunate that it feels out of place because I do think that the rest of the TVA is so unique and forward thinking for the MCU that when they have a room that's literally just backwards looking, I was just like, all right, that I can understand why they have that. I just wish it had been put in there a little more naturally, maybe
Hmm.
more throughout, maybe in actual flashbacks and not a deal that turns back time. I don't know. But I to talk about the TVA though,
Yes.
I'm fascinated by this, especially because, and it seems like we're on different pages with this. I don't think the TVA is as ironclad and uh stalwart as it seems. I think
Hmm.
that this is a gonna be a scummy organization, and it will fall near the end as timelines are once again restored to their actual states. I think they're strangleholding the universe into this one timeline that's not necessarily fair for infinite possibilities.
Hmm.
So I don't think the TVA will end up being will be this perfect force that it's setting up that's
That's
setting up as.
interesting. That is interesting because yeah, as we know with future MCU projects, we are getting some multiverse madness. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And yeah, I mean the fall, like a fall of the TVA would be a great
Catalyst.
a great catalyst. Thank you,
Yeah.
Tucker, for all of that to take place in the later MCU. So that's
Mhm.
entirely possible.
I
Um,
would say it's even likely, and I would say that because all of the ways that they were presenting the history of the TVA, which I was thought really cool, it was like 1950s cartoon
yeah,
style.
it's great.
That has the sinister energy to it, though.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we're sugarcoating this and turning it into propaganda, so it doesn't seem as bad as the reality is behind it. We don't
Hmm.
know anything about the timekeepers. They're creating people to spend their entire lives doing this one
These
job,
guys don't
and
even know what fish are.
yeah, and they clearly have power over anything, and
Hmm.
these Minutemen can just go out and be like, oh, it's too much paperwork,
Hmm.
whatever. Like I think it's as much darker, and I think that's really interesting, because it puts you in a position where, yeah, they're stopping this guy who did these bad things, but maybe it's not so bad, and maybe
Hmm.
the stranglehold in the timeline is actually the real villain here, and then who's this other Loki variant? That is what's his goal and how are they going to interact?
Or her goal. Wink, wink, nudge,
Oh,
nudge.
I guess that's true.
I
Considering
saw I
we
saw the silhouette. Here's what I think. Okay, so we didn't see the actual the villain variant Loki, and
Yeah.
I think that's because they need to tell the characters need to tell the audience that, oh, it's an alternate universe Loki, that's a female Loki or whatever. Because if we
Mhm.
just saw like an actress that in under the cloak or whatever, a lot of like, not on the level audiences would be like, what? I thought this was Loki. That's not Loki. That's
Yeah.
someone else. I don't know
No,
her.
I actually do think you're right. I
Yeah.
totally forgot about the idea of a female Loki being in this show. I
Hmm.
think getting multiversal variants is totally likely. And I think that the second episode will be an opening thing. There'll be, so you're a multiversal variant thing, and it'll be a 1950s cartoon. And
Hmm.
it's like, well, from other timelines, there are versions of yourselves, and they might be kind of different. What if you had horns? And that's totally what's going to happen.
Okay, so I just have a quick funny thing to point out. So when they go to that like 1500s church, and the
Hmm.
little French girl points to the window and points to the devil, my first thought was, oh, Mephisto! He's
Mephisto,
finally
yeah.
here. That's
Yep,
hilarious.
100%.
That's probably not, because this was filmed months and months ago, so it's probably not on purpose. But it's just a funny like thing in the scope of like WandaVision and stuff.
Yeah, unless they're really hinting at Mephisto, and I think Mephisto could be something larger happening in the greater Marvel universe that is just
Mhm.
being teased in these projects, and eventually we are going to get the actually Mephisto reveal, and it'll be like,
Eventually.
oh shit, they were leading
Oh,
up to this.
Mephisto!
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
but I'm very excited for this. I think this show is awesome visually. I'm
Yes.
loving
Oh,
the throwback aesthetics, and
yeah.
those sets are all really fantastic. You get old style TVs, retro
Hmm.
style chairs for them sitting in. I think it looks
I want to
awesome.
shout out the music as well. It's very
Oh
Doctor Who.
yes.
It's lots of like ooh, wee, ooh,
Yeah,
lots of that kind of
there's
stuff.
warbling as it's called
Yes.
in the
Oh, and the
the
subtitles.
subtitles,
Oh,
yes, they
neat.
call it
Okay.
warbling. But I do think that that actually works to set a very interesting vibe for this show that is completely different from anything else we've seen in the MCU. There
Yeah.
were moments where I was like, okay, well, this is an MCU sort of thing, especially when they're doing the end game recap at the beginning. I was like,
Hmm.
okay, yeah. But on the whole, this show seems to be setting itself apart visually,
Yes.
tonally. That music is entirely different, and it creates this sort of control esque
Ooh.
a visual style with
A video
it's got this,
gaming reference.
yeah, it's got a really cool vibe to it, and
Yes.
I'm excited to see how that is pulled into the future, as presumably we will be getting him visiting other versions of timelines and stuff. So I think that there's a lot they can do with the set design and the atmosphere to help the show stand out, because
Yeah.
what we've been seeing from these new projects, I mean, Falcon and Winter Soldier aside, is they're really trying to diversify a little bit. And when you get those shots with the darkness and people in fields and the outside of the
It's
TVA, all
yes.
those buildings and stuff, there's a really cool visual style going on
Yes.
here. And I think even people who aren't fans of the MCU have to admit this is a step up in production design, in visual
Mhm.
acuity. I think it's a really unique visual style that I'm excited for.
Yeah, not only visual style, but also like this is like their first big step into exploring multiverses and stuff. They're really taking themselves out of the box and being like, there's an otherworldly like
Yeah,
bureau that's 1950 style who's overseeing the sacred timeline, and there's multiverses and multiversal variants of people and characters who are different actors, and they're different versions of
we
these
literally
characters.
have a show that is a step by step introduction to how multiverses
And
work.
then after this, we get What If. So this is our first big step into the pool. We were dipping our toe in with Endgame and WandaVision and stuff. But this is
Mhm.
we're waist up now in this pool of multiverse.
Sure, I would say we're knees deep. We're just starting to wade.
Okay, I see. Well, we don't know how deep it's gonna go. We could be
That's true.
drowning in it. In a year's time. We could be drowning in it, Tucker. And you know what? I couldn't be happier, because I think so far this is shaping up to be maybe my favorite of the three Disney Plus Marvel Studios series,
Sure.
and I
It's
really
definitely
hope
started the strongest, I would
yeah,
say. Yeah.
I really hope it keeps up its momentum.
Hmm.
And we will be reviewing each and every episode as they come out. So make sure to subscribe to this channel for that. Like this video, ring that bell. That's a thing you have to do on YouTube videos now. And
Sure.
we'll see you at the next episode of Loki.
Okay, so we actually forgot. We're back. We
Yes.
forgot to talk about one moment in the episode that both of us thought was really funny, which is when this character Casey opens up his desk and he's got the Tesseract in there, and Loki's
Mhm.
like, "What?" And there's just like 20 Infinity Stones sitting in his desk, and I think that is a great way to just show the power of
The
the
TVA.
TVA and how the stuff we think is very powerful is very clearly not
Yeah.
in
And the
comparison to
stuff
these greater scale things.
and the stuff that Loki thinks is powerful isn't powerful. So it's not
Well,
only
yeah.
a great funny moment, but also a great another additive on his like de-evolution into insignificance. Great
Hmm.
stuff. Great Loki. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Great Loki? What the fuck does that mean?
Oh, prune me, daddy.